go again. So I think we actually got, Java said he might be, Java's accepted, so.
No worries.
Awesome.
Excuse me.
Well, I just quickly mentioned the discussion points I have and just see if Jeff dropped in. Just these are not necessarily discussion, more just creating visibility. So on the observability work, Henry gave a demo of some of those items in last week's demo.
Cool.
So that's nice to see. And Scarback has, actually I saw Scarback has got the console observability as well as the nginx stuff in progress. So
Perfect.
That's good. So I think we should, there's a few little gaps, but I'm expecting we'll have this stuff all wrapped up reasonably, like maybe with Henry back next week, that will all wrap neatly.
Sure. So I think, it's probably, I still need to do the configuration audit and stuff. I want to try and get to Canary as quickly as possible, but it's still like, it's not like I'm doing it by Friday or anything like that.
Exactly.
So I think we will just keep progressing everything as as we can, and then when we actually get close to the time, we'll just see where everything's at and see
exactly. Yeah, that
what
makes sense.
lands when and when we want to shake things out.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then number 3 was really just highlighting Scarbeck's request for feedback on the nginx stuff. So just in case anyone missed that,
Yep.
on Slack.
Yeah, because I guess we never thought about that, but I guess this is going to be a huge amount of logs. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. So yeah, over to you, Graham, on the demo.
Sure. So I'll share my screen. Cool. Should work. So I am going to hijack pre temporarily. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to deploy so I'm just doing a deploy job now to actually turn the web pods on in pre. And I'm just going to watch this deployment. So we can go to hopefully I'll bump this up and I will look for web service web mesh. So it's showing nothing at the moment. This is just showing me any web service pods that are going to come up. This is going to take forever, as it always does. But while we're doing that, I can also talk about, so basically I did this today. I put it in pre. I ran a QA pipeline job against pre just to try and see what I could see. I got a few failures. So the sanity test I would have expected to all pass. I mean, I'd expect most of these to pass as well. The failures I had in the smoke test, I'm not convinced this isn't a permissions issue with me. So basically the permission errors I'm getting, and I will drop this. I think the pipeline is in the doc. If it's not in the doc, let me put the pipeline in the doc for people to have a look at. But essentially in the smoke test, I just had this error saying from the Selenium, saying misconfigured source labs authentication error. You used username none with access key none to authenticate. To me, I'm not an expert. This sounds like this should, like there's a username and password that's not being set. And I wonder if they're CI environment variables that I don't have access to or something like that. I'm not sure, but basically that's the only reason this test failed, is it was just trying to run this test. And I mean, I could probably have a poke in here. So I assume, see your GitLab username. I don't know if that means it's trying to use me and I don't have access to something. But it was just interesting that both of these two failed with that exact same error. All the other smoke tests seem to pass. I did some of these ones, which were browser UI, anything with kind of browser UI, I tried to run as well. They all passed except this last one. And this last one failed, saying create pull mirror for a repository of its SSH with private key, configures the sync pull request mirrored repository. So that test failed, timed out. So I don't know, once again, if this is an actual problem or if it's just something, if I retried it, it worked, it just didn't take that long or what have you. So while we're waiting for that, we can see that this is the web service pod. We're launching one web service pod. It's up and running. Or it's starting up. Rails takes a long time to start up.
On the test failures, Graham, like, would it
Sure.
be worth trying to run them again? Like, do we have the web running on the VMs on pre that we could run a kind of comparison?
I could totally just, yeah, if I just launched them again, like against webs, that's probably what I should have done. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't spend too much time on it. I was just like, I was going to wait until I actually had the MR properly merged and everything. But yeah, first thing tomorrow, well, I can run it on VMs. I probably should and just double check.
We worth just seeing which ones fail.
If they fail with the exact same thing, then I'm sure it's permissions error, in which which case I can just ask QA to figure it out. So you can see web service web is running. We can now actually do, so I should be able to have this. So this is just tailing the logs from the web service pod. It's passing it to a tool called Angle Grinder, which basically, because they're JSON logs, I can basically take those logs, pass it to Angle Grinder, which will read every line as JSON object, and then it allows me to manipulate it. In this case, I'm getting an account by status, so HTTP status code. So you can see some of them come back with none, which is when we hit the metrics endpoint, and then everything else is 200s. So you can see that looks all fine at the moment. Now, if I actually go on the load balancer, I'll just do chef client disable. Oh god. Gigglies test. So here's at the moment, this is only looking at one of the VMs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak the API. Where's API gone? Is API rate limit, HTTPS web, canary. There it is. Because API and web are going through nginx, the backends themselves are actually the same. So I'm going to take away this backend. I'm going to put this backend in. And once again, I mean, we're seeing a lot of 200s. That's nothing exciting. What we might do is not pass that to Angle Grinder. Let's have a look at the logs themselves. So we can see we'll get rid of any readiness. And then hopefully, still a lot of stuff hitting that. That's okay. If I go to pre.gitlab, whoops, I'll open this in a new pre.gitlab.com. You see, there's me, username Graham Gillies, right there. So you can see it's hitting the pod. Essentially, the demo proves it's hitting the pods. You know, I haven't got much data in here. That's why I was using QA tests. But you know, we can see there's me again going to the groups new with my username, my Fedora Linux box. So we can see that, you know, the website, from what I can tell, works. So I'm fairly confident things are mostly working. There's nothing hideously broken. Images, JavaScript seem to be loading and what have you. But yeah, that's more or less what I really had to demo. Unless anyone has anything else they would like me to show them in particular. A fairly boring demo, but it is, you know, should be all relatively straightforward.
I was going to ask about the health checks change. Is there anything interesting or anything visible on the updated health check?
Yep. So for those of you who aren't aware, So we have nginx now, and so API is under nginx and web is under nginx. So this actually taught us to kind of rethink the way we do health checks a little bit, because before we would just send a health check to like dash readiness, and that would go to say the web service pods. And because the backend is the same, it's the same nginx that we tell HA proxy, we're checking the readiness for say web, but we're not checking the readiness for say API independently of each other. So what we had to do is we actually had to do a little bit of creative Kubernetes ingress object work, GitLab extras values, to basically create a new ingress object. And it's a little bit hard to read here, but essentially what happens is we take two paths, so this one and this one, to basically rewrite those URLs. So basically what we have is, so if you go to nginx/dash/k8s/API, then that will go directly to the API pods. And same way for web, that goes to the web pods. So that means we can set health checks independently of each other. And the reason we couldn't do that before is if we try and set the readiness checks, basically API lives in /API and web lives in /. And so any request that wasn't /API, like the readiness checks, would always go to web. So basically I've added this extra ingress object so that if you look in HA proxy now, say web or API, should be API at least. Where was it? Yeah, so you can see now it's this weird readiness check here, /k, dash k8s dash API dash _ dash readiness. So that way, because what happens is the path up to the /API gets chopped off and then sent directly to those API pods. So it's a little bit awkward, but that way we guarantee when we're doing backends that are both behind nginx in HA proxy, the readiness checks are going directly to the pods we actually care about health-wise. We're also changing these at the moment. So HTTPS Git and WebSockets used to be TCP web health checks, and that means that they would just connect. A checker could do a TCP connection, and that was good enough. It did nothing more. So even if the backend was returning 500 errors, like it was just crashing constantly, the that health check would still pass because it could still establish a TCP connection. It wasn't looking at the HTTP code. As part of this work, I've changed us back to actually using the readiness endpoint. So we're doing HTTP health checks again, which are obviously far more accurate. It's not, we would be in a very bad situation if these would be failing in such a way that entire backends in Kubernetes would be taken out, because you've got to remember a backend gets routed to a random pod. So it'd have to be, all the pods would have to be in a bad state for this to actually return a problem. But still, there's always that chance. So we try and, protect ourselves best we can.
I do have a question about
Sure.
the first thing you show, the /dash/k8s API, whatever. So
Yep.
If I understood correctly, this is for the HA proxy health check. So we are actually rewriting URLs so that at proxy level we route to them to the right place. This actually means that from the product perspective, we are shadowing that namespace. So we will never be able to have Rails //k8s routes, because okay, can we work around this going straight to the pods without, because it will never happen, but I'm kind of scared that someone is going to work on some crazy new Kubernetes integration and decide to use /k8s as a shorthand links, and then it doesn't work.
You're absolutely right. When I picked it, I was kind of myself, I was like, should I let someone know? I did some checking and no one was using it, but you're right. So this is my thoughts on all of this situation. I think it should be done better. I think it should be changed. I'm kind of thinking this should be addressed at the same time we want to the epic where we address HA proxy in general. I think there's I've mentioned this before, I think a discussion on Cloudflare, HA proxy, Ingress nginx, the amount of things we've got, load balancers we've got sitting in the stack now, is and the amount of extra, like, extra Ingress objects we've got, even just to support some of the settings we need, is starting to get it is starting to get a little bit crazy. So I agree. I would like this to change and get rid of it. I would like to see us replacing, like, hypothetically, HA proxy and Ingress nginx all together with one kind of single front door solution behind Cloudflare that does everything we need, like, properly. Kubernetes native as well, so that running inside of Kubernetes can check the pods properly, and we just have Cloudflare straight on top of that rather than, but and we have I think an epic to do that. So that's kind of my thinking at the moment. I do think this should be changed, but I want to try and see if I can push it into, let's talk about HA proxy in general, and this is one of the problems with it that we have.
I know we've talked about that a little bit before. Like, is there already some sort of issue or epic around that captures, like, not necessarily it has to be the full discussion, but just so we can start dropping these things into?
Yeah. So I think we have, I think it's literally called something like migrate HA proxy to Kubernetes or something like that, because as a lift and shift, we could just put HA proxy in Kubernetes, but I'm not convinced it's the best solution. But yeah, there has been, and I've put a few notes on there of, like, different Ingress controllers and, like, a few different, basically anytime I find something that's interesting to that discussion, I have been putting links on there.
That's great.
I'll see if I can find it more. But, when we, obviously web migration and stuff's more important, but I do think at some point we will gain a lot by revisiting, the front door. Like, we only keep Ingress nginx around to do proxy buffering, which obviously is what we discovered with the API migration, which is fine, but Cloudflare can also do that for ourselves. So that saves us money if we don't have to run nginx. Like, it's definitely not, as part of our migration with API and web, now's not the time to be changing things up too much. But I think post that, I think there's a lot of simplification for the stack. We've done a lot more work in rack attack now, like a lot more work. So a lot of the rate limiting we used to do in HA proxy, I remember as an engineer on call, I used to be doing a lot more rate limiting in HA proxy, and I think that's become a lot less now. So I just think there's a lot more that we've been able to, like, shift away from that, we can figure out something better. And, how we do canarying, traffic routing, all that stuff, can be part of that larger conversation potentially.
Cool, sounds good. Great, thanks for demoing that stuff, Graham. I just wanted to share, so yesterday we got a new web blocker. So I've pinged, and that's 11548, so I've linked it in here. So there was an incident that Matt came across, and Stan's comment links off to that incident. So it's not a new problem, but it will be a much bigger problem with the migration. So with that in mind, we might want to consider, like, how far we want to push. Well, I hopefully we'll get a response on this today around prioritization, but we might want to consider just the kind of ordering of events or, like, timeline, because I guess we'll see this on, potentially, I guess we'd see this on staging, depending on what's triggering it. But obviously it doesn't matter so much there. It may just cause some noise for infrastructure and sort of deployments and things. But it will, I guess, be a problem for Canary. So we might want to consider, just as we have a lot of other sort of smaller tidy up tasks, let's see what the response comes back on this issue, and then we can decide, like, do we just wait for this to happen before we push through to staging and progress from there? Or how do we want to handle this?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll keep an eye on that, and obviously as timing, I guess the big concern would be if it's somehow, like, if I put it into staging and then somehow tests fail, would that mean, like, it would start blocking auto deploys? That's really what I'm worried about, I guess.
Yeah, it would do. I mean, I get it potentially gives extra work to whoever's on call as they kind of have to help us. So there's a little bit of a risk. It's also, I guess, how much value, like, do we gain stuff having, well, let's see what the estimate comes back on this, but if it's not a short piece of work, we may want to just reorder things a little.
I'm just surprised that, because, you know, we do have people using the Helm chart and using GitLab, obviously not as big as GitLab.com. I'm just surprised that an issue like this suddenly came out of the woodwork, but I guess there you go.
Yeah, agreed. So I'll see what I can find out on this one today, so I can leave an update for you later. And then we can do ordering. If we do decide to push this out a little bit, we have got other things we could do with doing a Helm upgrade. We've also got pages that could be migrated. So it's not like we obviously never run out of work, but let's maybe review whether we want to wait on this one before going to staging or not. Awesome. And as they covered just briefly, 2 and 3, just mostly FYIs if people are interested. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask or discuss the demo today? Yep. Okay. Fantastic. Awesome. Thanks so much for all the demoing, Graham, and thanks everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks everyone.